In the center of the briefing chamber, Security Chief Thorne's face didn't just pale, it dissolved. The human mask shivered, peeling away like liquid glass to reveal a sleek, angular void where features should have been. Silas felt the magnetic seals hum as the doors locked. The Xandarian infiltrator straightened, its voice vibrating with a metallic frequency, layered and wrong. The mask has fallen, and the real game is just beginning. If you're ready to see how a human maintenance engineer fights a shadow empire, subscribe and stay for the fallout. Now, let's go back to where the rot first touched the hull. That same smell of ozone and wet copper. Silas had first noticed it 4 hours ago, standing in a cabin that smelled like recycled coffee from a thermos he'd forgotten to wash. Silas sat at his workbench, the rhythmic, annoying hum of a loose ventilation fan the only thing keeping the silence from becoming heavy. He didn't mind the solitude of the graveyard shift on the Wayfarer. Machines didn't lie, and they certainly didn't judge a man for preferring a wrench to a conversation. Then the door alarm chimed. Night protocol restricted movement between crew sectors, meaning the corridor should have been empty. When the slider retracted, Elara Thau stood there. She was an Aquilon, her skin usually an intense sapphire, but now it flickered in sickly, irregular pulses of neon green. Her uniform was shredded. "Human," she whispered, her voice tight with a physical strain that made Silas drop his soldering iron. "Will you clean me?" He didn't ask questions. You don't ask for a permit when the hull is breaching. He guided her toward his compact hygiene unit, the only one on this deck with manual pressure overrides. Silas adjusted the settings. Steam began to rise, smelling of sterilized water and the faint, bitter tang of the NOx 7 catalyst. It was a nasty compound. Originally a human-engineered industrial coolant, to an Aquilon's porous membranes, it was a death sentence. The NOx 7 was thermal sensitive. It didn't just sit on the skin. It looked for heat signatures to trigger its cellular hardening process. If Silas didn't flush it within 20 minutes, it would crystallize, turning Elara's neural pathways into brittle glass. He applied the neutralizing gel, his hands steady, watching the green glow dim as the foam reacted. He could feel the heat radiating off her skin, a feverish warmth that told him the chemical was already trying to anchor itself to her spine. Quiet. As he worked the spray between the delicate ridges of her spine, Silas stopped. The green residue wasn't fading randomly. It was pulling itself into geometric lines, thin as spider silk, tracing her nervous system with predatory intent, which meant the readings were wrong. "This isn't a spill, Elara," Silas muttered, his jaw tightening as he reached for his diagnostic wedge. "It's a lattice. Someone didn't just drop a canister. They programmed this stuff to find your brain." Elara's skin surged with a pale lavender, a sign of deep internal distress that had nothing to do with the temperature. "That is impossible. The catalyst was modified on Earth, and that's why we're in trouble. There is a monster hiding in the maintenance logs, and it's about to trigger a firestorm that Silas can't fix with a wrench. We're moving to the botanical tiers next." The diagnostic wedge began to scream a low-frequency warning. It wasn't the cabin alarm. It was a secondary signature, a ghost in the machine. Silas ignored the standard ship-wide interface, trusting the battered tool he'd built in a garage in Ohio more than the Wayfarer's polished OS. The wedge showed a repeating pulse signature, a heartbeat hidden inside the maintenance relays. A sharp, melodic chime cut through the air. "Attention, crew." The intercom droned, the voice of the ship's computer flat and uncaring. "Environmental surge detected in Botanical Tier 4. Oxygen saturation exceeding safety limits. All technicians report." Silas looked at Elara. Her skin was still recovery blue, but her eyes held a jagged, newfound fear. High oxygen plus a single spark equaled a bomb the size of a city block. And the timing was too perfect. High above the rows of nutrient-dense food towers, the emergency sirens began to wail. Oxygen saturation was hitting 28%. One spark, one static discharge from a polyester sleeve, and they'd all be stardust. As Silas knelt before the sub-panel, The sharp edge of a metal shaving in his jumpsuit pocket bit into his thigh, a tiny, grounding sting of reality. Silas reached for the main override. But the console flared with a hidden subroutine, a code so deep it was mimicking the ship's own life support pulse. It was a secondary script, a repeating cycle designed to trigger again and again until the crew was either dead or too terrified to trust one another. Silas didn't have time to call the bridge. He didn't have time to ask for permission. He opened the heartbeat loop, isolated the repeating pulse designed to kill them all, and replaced it with a crude, uneven human-made sequence, a messy signal that lacked elegance but possessed the stubborn, unpredictable rhythm of a predator refusing to die. He didn't hesitate. The oxygen levels began to crawl back toward the safety margin. Beside him, Alara breathed in the stabilizing air, her skin shifting from a panicked lavender back to its natural sapphire. She watched his hands, noting the way his knuckles were scarred from years of fixing things that weren't supposed to be fixable. "They will know you broke the loop," she whispered. "Let them," Silas replied, his eyes narrowing as he wiped grease onto his thigh. "I want them to see the bait." And now, in the briefing chamber, Marcus Thorne was no longer a man. The liquid glass shimmer of his skin had peeled away completely, revealing the gaunt, predatory frame of a Xandarian infiltrator. Silas didn't feel the panic that was currently rippling through the rows of humans and Aquilons. He felt the cold weight of a metal chair in his hands. Thorne, the shapeshifter, lunged toward the central console to initiate a ship-wide purge, but Silas was already moving. He swung the chair with the blunt, unrefined force of a man who had learned to fight in the dark corners of Earth's failing cities. The impact was loud, a heavy crack of metal against alien bone that sent the infiltrator stumbling back into Alara's waiting bioelectric field. The room erupted. Security drones descended, but the crew didn't scatter. Seeing Silas stand his ground, the humans and Aquilons didn't retreat to their separate corners. They closed the circle. The Xandarian hissed, pinned by the blue flicker of the restraint field. "You are chaotic. You break the very systems that keep you alive." Silas stepped over the wreckage of the chair, his breathing heavy but even. "We don't break them. We adapt them." Later, as the Wayfarer drifted back into its peaceful artificial sunrise, Alara found Silas back at his workbench. She looked at the bruised skin on his knuckles, and then at the species-mixed groups laughing in the mess hall. "My people were taught that humans were dangerous because of your anger," she said softly. "But you are dangerous because you refuse to let things stay broken." Silas gave a tired half-smile. "It's a living." The battered diagnostic wedge sat on the metal table, its casing scorched and its internal lights flickering with a slow, steady amber glow. How would you react if you discovered the very systems keeping you alive had been turned against you by someone you trusted? Tell us your survival strategy in the comments, and we'll see you tomorrow for the next Chronicle.